Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 3 of Admit 1, where my buddy Adam and I are going to be taking a look at Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, and if sequels can actually be successful when made after a really long time.
Yep, that's true. And first up is a sequel made after a very long time. Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. So, this is a sequel 9 years in the making, I believe. And it's directed by Robert Rodriguez again. And stars some of the same cast, some of a new cast, and is another chapter in this kind of noir-esque action, over-the-top craziness. So, what did we think?
It did not surprise me with its content. It's what I was expecting from Frank Miller and the gang. You know, this feels very Sin City.
Yep.
It's atmospheric, it's dark, it's very violent. It's probably even more sexual than the first one.
Yep.
And you have Ava Green to thank for that.
Yeah.
Pretty much every scene she's in, I'm just giving you a heads up, be prepared for mass nudity.
Not a family-friendly movie.
Yep. Give it a score just off the bat, though. I'd say 7.5.
Okay.
I liked it.
It's very unique, much like the first one. You're not really going to find pretty much anything like it.
Yeah.
This one, much like the first one, has kind of an anthology of stories where it looks at a few different characters, what they're doing in this crazy world of Sin City, and it kind of loosely ties them all together. But I think this one tied it a bit closer than the first one. So I think what did it start with?
It starts, I believe, with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character arriving in Sin City.
Okay, yeah.
This young hotshot gambler.
Yeah, let's talk about Joseph Gordon-Levitt and
Right.
his character. How did you feel about that?
I think he's a good actor for this genre of film.
Yeah.
I think he's got a good 20s, 30s era face.
He does, yeah.
And I'd like to see him do more films like this, especially where he has a larger part.
Well, yeah. He was probably my favorite part of the movie. Him and his character. His character is kind of a very slick gambler who was very dexterous, ambidextrous in fact, and was doing a lot of card things and was very cocky.
Yep, but that's the problem with Sin City, is if you get cocky with the wrong people,
That's right.
despite how badass you are, you're going to get taken down. And returning from the first film is the notorious Rourke family, who pretty much control every aspect of Sin City in some way.
So Powers Booth playing Senator Rourke, who pretty much is like a puppeteer across the entire city in one way or another. Very menacing figure, to be sure. And so multiple characters throughout the story have beef with him, and
either directly or indirectly.
Right. And so everyone thinks they can topple them, but you got to watch the movie to find out if they can. So yeah, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, very cool character. Wish he was in the majority of the film, but the majority of the film is devoted to Josh Brolin.
Yep.
And Ava Green.
Correct.
And so we don't really want to spoil too much about how that all is, but basically Josh Brolin is a character, much like almost everybody in Sin City, with a very troubled past.
Yeah.
And a lot of that past involves Ava Green's character, who is the titular Dame to Kill For. You get it.
Yep.
And so the main chunk of the story involves their kind of spat, I guess you could say. And Ava Green, I think, did a pretty good job. I mean, she was more than just eye candy.
No, she had command of each scene that she was on.
Yeah.
You believe how manipulative her character's supposed to be.
Right. She's kind of a growing figure in movies now, where they need a woman to play a very kind of scary, almost like a Black Widow type character. She's very good at that, and that definitely sums up her character here. What did you think of Josh Brolin?
He was fine.
Yeah.
I've seen him do some great stuff. I've seen him do some decent stuff. I'd lump this in with his decent films. I don't think particular character he played really
Yeah,
challenged him
I think
as
the
an
character was more where he was just like very grizzled. He's just he's never. I mean, not many people are smiling in Sin City. He was very just muzzled and.
He's a cookie cutter neo-noir character.
Yeah, I would say. What else? We had, of course, Marv, Mickey Rourke, returning once again, who is just anytime he's on screen, it's just kind of fun to watch. He's there pretty much just as the muscle of the film. When any character has a problem, they need somebody beaten up. In comes Marv.
You just buy him a couple of drinks, he'll do anything that you tell him to.
That's right.
So.
The more dangerous, the better. And so yeah, he was. I'm really glad that he came back. He was a very enjoyable part of the film, I would say. Yeah. And then we also had
Jessica Alba.
Jessica Alba,
who
plays Nancy. She was also in the first one, and she was, I guess, expanded a bit more for this film. She had a more involved part. How did you feel about this kind of new piece of the puzzle that she was playing?
I'll just say the way they sequence the stories in this one, I feel like her parts, the thunder of the film's kind of been stolen.
It felt a bit tacked on
from her.
Yeah.
And I thought she did fine in the role, and she's still very hot. She's proven that. But it's just another thing with Josh Brolin's character where it's like, yeah, they're filling their parts in the film, but there's nothing too exceptional about the way it played out.
There's like a lot of glue missing, I would say.
Yeah.
Like you have the puzzle pieces there, but they don't stick together all that great. And I would especially say Jessica Alba's part, which majorly comes in towards the end, the last 15 minutes, is just kind of there and then it's done with.
Yeah, and speaking of that, big Bruce Willis fans, he's in it, but not for much. So don't expect too much.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil Sin City 1 if you haven't seen that, but he is more in that film.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you know what happens to his character in that film, you can see how it goes in the second one. But yeah, I'm sure he got paid his $4 million for the one day, and then that was it. So yeah, if I had to give it a score overall, yeah, I'd probably say in the 7.5-ish.
I mean, it may not sound like we're too praiseworthy of this film, but I mean, I still have to say it's so different from what I'm used to seeing.
Yeah.
And it's fun, each character, they're doing their own narration half the time. It feels kind of like you're reading some sort of graphic novel or something with their inner monologues going, and it's still absorbing. Like, it really takes you away from things by watching it.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm sitting there in the theater, I'm enjoying it. I have no problems with it. But then, down the line, a year from now, am I really gonna be interested in rewatching it? Probably not. But if it's on, I don't think I would shy away from it. It's one of those movies. I'd say its main problem is I think it focuses on style over substance.
Yep.
It cares so much about how it looks. It needs to capture that crazy graphic novel Frank Miller look, and it definitely does.
Oh.
It does a fantastic job of it.
But the only problem with that is in 2004, 2005, when the first one came out, that's the first time you're seeing it. It's amazing looking.
Right.
You forget about a lot of the flaws of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much the same thing this time around.
Pretty much, yeah.
So,
it's just more of the same.
The flaws become more noticeable.
If you were a fanatic Sin City fan, huge fan of the first movie, you'll probably like the second one, but then you've already probably seen it.
Yeah.
If you didn't like the first one, I don't think you're going to like the sequel.
And this movie did not do well at the box office.
No, it did not. It bombed harder than I ever imagined.
Yeah, I thought Expendables 3 was shocking. This was even lower than
I'd say it's the box office bomb of the summer with a $6 million-ish opening weekend, which is terrible. But we'll talk more about how that was impacted later on. So on to news. It was kind of a slow week, I think.
Yep.
Not a whole lot to go on. There was some news in the comic book movie world about Joaquin Phoenix being a strong contender to play Doctor Strange. But since neither of us are too knowledgeable about the character, there's not a whole lot we can say about that. There was some leaks of the Doctor Doom costume, but not a whole lot to say about that.
All I'd say is, as far as Fantastic Four villains go, I think Doctor Doom is probably one of my favorites.
Oh, he's a fantastic villain.
Yeah, he's really iconic. He's badass. So
depending on your perspective, he's not even really a villain.
Yeah. So I think it's a good piece of news to hear about upcoming Fantastic Four stuff.
Well, sure,
yeah.
But that movie has some pressure on its shoulders. And also then in the comic book world, there is reportedly a sequel to Blade in the works. Now this is, I say reportedly because this info is, hesitant at best. Sources say that Wesley Snipes has confirmed it, that he's getting ready for it, he's excited for it. They also confirmed he's looking to be paid $3 million.
Plus a cut of the profits from the movie,
yeah.
So very, very nice payday for him.
He's very excited to get back to that, and he himself has learned things that he thinks he can put into the character and whatnot. So, does the world need another Blade sequel?
Well, I guess, kind of as a side evasion of that, I think this movie will get made, since even Blade Trinity, which was the poorest reviewed one, still was highly profitable. And I think it does need a sequel because of that movie as well, because I think Trinity left a lot of fans wanting for really a strong final chapter.
Yeah.
I mean, say what you want about Blade Trinity, but it didn't, I don't think most people would say it lived up to 1 or 2.
Well, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So, I love Wesley Snipes, I love the Blade movies, all 3 of them, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think the main issue here is licensing, because when the Blade movies were made, they were made through New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers.
Okay.
And since then, the rights to Blade have reverted back to Marvel, who's owned by Disney. So do you think Disney wants to invest in a movie such as Blade?
They've pushed themselves in the past a little bit, like, Pirates was like, PG-13 Disney movie, and its affiliation with Marvel now, which, almost all Marvel movies are PG-13.
This is not your standard Marvel movie.
This would make the jump.
Yes,
it could be a critical turning point for Disney, whether they deny or push this one through. So
I mean, a lot of people see Marvel movies, basically comic book movies nowadays, as lighthearted, just good family fun, generally. So, for Disney to invest in something like this and move towards, a subsection where it's darker, grimmer, bloodier, that would be very interesting. So, because there are plenty of, I think, Marvel movies that could be made that have a darker tone. So, if anybody's going to lead the charge, I'd rather it be Blade.
And some of these older action stars, Stallone and Arnold. Arnold especially hasn't been having the greatest success with his standalone films.
Not since he came back.
Yep. Big difference, of course. Blade is part of this almost legendary franchise.
Yeah.
And Wesley Snipes is 52, but he just went through 3 years in the Slammer, and that gets you in shape. So
it does.
I'm sure he'll be up to the task of reprising.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, moving on. We're going to talk about sequels in general that come out years after the last film in the series.
Yeah, and this is just springing up from what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Dame to Kill for 9 years later flops. This Blade sequel, who knows? I mean, there's been a long span of time again, but it's difficult to say really with that one. So
right.
There's a few examples we can look at to kind of evaluate this here.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Terminator Salvation comes to mind.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
I mean, not, I don't think, as huge a gap as some of these other films between Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, and Terminator Salvation, but it is a good example. I can't remember how well Terminator Salvation did at the box office.
Yeah, it did modestly.
Okay.
It made a little bit more than its budget, I believe.
Alright.
And I remember the trailer for that movie was amazing, and the movie itself was underwhelming.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure if I don't think the problem with that film was the gap or a lack of interest in Terminator. I think the problem there was lack of Arnold.
yeah,
That movie in general did not feel like much of a Terminator movie.
No, they took it the post-apocalyptic way without heading back to the past and everything after Judgment Day, and it didn't quite amount to the fun action that Terminator movies are.
Right, and for me, Terminator is Arnold, and so I mean, not that the Terminator movies couldn't go to that apocalyptic time because that's where it was heading.
Yeah.
It was inevitable. But the lack of your star actor, the main force behind the films, and just throwing in, you know, Christian Bale and Sam Worthington into this apocalyptic robot movie, it was just like, this is not really Terminator.
But Terminator Genesis will star Arnold.
Yes.
And it looks like they're going to try and redeem the franchise using that strategy of bringing him back.
Arnold himself says that this new one will remind fans why they love Terminator, which sounds good, Arnold.
It's a great claim.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So this one, despite the kind of stupid spelling of the title, Genesis with a Y towards the end, this movie is going to star Arnold as an older, not an older version, but an aged T-800 model Terminator, because apparently Terminators age like humans at a slower rate, but they do. So he's going to have gray hair, I believe. And there will also be a younger version, or younger model of T-800. I don't know what to really say about it. I mean, I think Arnold saw that, okay, he comes back, he's like, all right, I'm Arnold, I'll show these young guys how to do action movies, and then he did some standalone, and it was like, the world showed Arnold that that's not what they want.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, I'll go back to my franchises. I can't go wrong with that. So we've got, you know, the Conan movie, we've got this Terminator movie, there's probably something else in the pipeline at some point. Just make Commando 2, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, if we just write off Terminator Salvation entirely, and this is just the real sequel to Terminator 3, then
I'd be okay with that.
I'd be okay with that.
Maybe they can get James Cameron to direct if he's not too busy with the Avatar trilogy. That would hype the movie a lot if James Cameron came
I
back.
think Genesis has already wrapped production. But
all right. No James Cameron.
Maybe next time.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's just, there's this big cauldron of sequels kind of just churning out there. We're going to have old Harrison Ford in the new Star Wars movies. So
right. And Harrison Ford is no stranger to sequels. A long time in the coming. You look at Indiana Jones 4.
Yep. Which did well commercially.
It did, even though everyone denies that it exists at this point.
Yeah.
That movie, I don't know. What are your general thoughts on that movie? I know it's kind of off the discussion, really, but...
Well, the initial reaction was just everyone screaming out against it.
Yeah.
And I thought the critical moment of the movie was bullshit. It felt out of place. It was a bold move. I mean, I can commend it in one sense, but I don't know, with Shia LaBeouf in there and everything, I really don't feel the need to ever see that movie again.
You know, come to think of it, I'm not sure if I've ever rewatched it since.
Yeah.
So, I think that movie did well because almost it was so long in the making.
Yeah.
Where it was like, wow, Harrison Ford is coming back for another Indiana Jones movie.
And I think that's going to fuel the Star Wars hype, too. It's going to help.
Oh, definitely.
There's always going to be plenty of Star Wars hype for anything Star Wars.
I'm not sure there's really a world where a Star Wars movie could do that badly.
And, I don't know, speaking of, I guess thinking of one more of these sequels that come to mind while we keep looking at these big time gaps was the last 300 film, Rise of an Empire, which came out earlier this summer.
Yep.
Misses the Gerard Butler dynamism of the first one.
Yeah, he was kind of the main force behind that one. He had kind of that magnetism where you like, I felt like he was a king, you know?
But it does have a seductive Ava Green. Where have we been talking about that?
Yeah, that's true. She played one of those characters as well. And I think 300 Rise of an Empire was another one of those movies where it's like, I'm watching it in the theater, I don't regret it, you know, there's some fun action going on, it's kind of crazy. But after that, anytime I want my 300 fix, I'm going to go back to the first
watch the original.
Yeah, so... It was okay, but it kind of had some heavy shoes to fill, I suppose.
Yep. So, all right, what's the lesson we can tell studio companies when they're making a sequel that's been gone for a long time? Do you have to get Ava Green? Do you need a really old actor who was in the original?
I think having more original actors is probably the better way to go, from what we've seen.
The Expendables route.
Well, the Expendables, I mean, that's a different
No, I know.
entirely.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you know, people like the original films for a reason, generally. So being able to recapture that in the best way, you know, in as much as possible is the best way to go. But it's kind of hard to tell sometimes how well a movie's going to do, you know, so...
I mean, good writing helps and
Of
good,
course.
good production values and all those other trivia.
But sometimes it's just people don't go. I mean, what really was the reason why Sin City didn't do well? Was it because it was so long in the making? Was it a marketing thing? Was it just an interest thing?
I'll just say this. Narrow market. Rated R film. It's people who like either Frank Miller or the original Sin City. And when that's measured up against all Star Wars fans or
Yeah.
all superhero fans,
No,
these
that's
movies
true.
these movies are never going to do as well, but you should always try and still cash in on that nostalgia value if you can.
Yeah. But I've heard people, you know, they were talking that they didn't even know a Sin City sequel came out. They hadn't
Yeah.
heard of it. I mean, marketing is a big deal, not for, you know, people like you and me that talk about movies all day, every day, but for some people, they need that marketing.
Well, I'll say this. I've seen about maybe the trailer for the new Annie film maybe 14 or 15 times. I think I saw the Sin City trailer maybe twice.
Yeah,
So
and that Annie movie is definitely knows its marketing. But we're not going to go see it, so well, maybe you will.
all right. So thanks for braving all these sequels with us as we try and look at this forecast ahead of us.
Hopefully, coming weeks are a bit more exciting for news.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always ready for more info. But September in general, I think, is kind of a slow month.
Yeah.
Before the holidays.
The holiday storm is coming.
Mhm.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you in the next episode.